Looks like we're live. Good evening, everybody. It's the Faika Midweek Podcast on September 22nd. We are here with Willie Salave'a. Willie is a entrepreneur, a business owner, and he's working with, he's working with Poly by Design on a project that we'll talk about as we get through the show. But he's doing design. We'll talk about this with the NFL, Major League Baseball, NHL, NBA. Did I get all those right, Willie?
Yeah, Mr. Olympia.
All right. So welcome, Willie. Good to have you. You've got some people with you if you want to introduce them to the audience, and then we'll.
Sure. Scott, you want to come over? Preston, come over quickly. So let me introduce you first to my son, Preston.
Hi, Preston.
Preston, Tama Fasasao Suamailevai Fanua, Ribeiro Salave'a. We just turned 11 years old this month.
Happy birthday, Preston.
Thank you.
And then my other half, my husband here, Scott Ribeiro.
Hello, Scott.
Hello. The one that holds it all together for us here.
I trained with some Brazilians in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and the R was pronounced with a H.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
When I saw you on the guest list, I was thinking, I wonder if it's Ribeiro or if it's Ribeiro.
Yeah. Well, we Americanized it and said Ribeiro. But
well, good to have you.
You're right. I heard that for years.
Yeah, his ancestors are from Brazil.
Ah.
So they're going to head out. Sorry they can't stay. They got practices, Preston's volleyball practice to head out to.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be joining online.
But they'll be joining on their phones later.
And who else do we have on? Ray Harris, and then it says Susie's B-Day. So, Willie, you and I talked about possibly doing a debate, and I think we'll get into that later. But I think having the right people on that have experience. You're working with the NHPI, the Biden and Harris NHPI group. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. That's correct.
That's a hot topic right now. The election just seems to be heating up. But let's talk about you first. I think we're really interested in how does one end up, because I know how hard it is to get to be able to work with the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball. How do you end up where you are today and working with them and designing materials for those organizations everybody's heard of?
Well, that's a story. So let me back up a few years. I lived in New Zealand for 10 years, and I decided to move back after 9/11. So I came back home to where I grew up which was Redondo Beach, California, in 2002. And I moved to Redondo, and I thought, well, I don't think I could afford $3,000 a month for a studio apartment. And so everybody was saying, go to Vegas, go to Vegas. That's where the opportunity was. And in New Zealand, I was the director of tourism for the USA and Canada. So my job was to promote the USA as a destination. And I thought by moving to Las Vegas, I could easily jump on and get a job in one of the hotels and in the tourist industry. Well, I got to Las Vegas, and that wasn't the case. A lot of the casinos here require that you have a background check and credit history. And because I lived in New Zealand and had no credit history, I couldn't get hired on anywhere in the casino industry.
Wow.
So I was desperate. At that time, the exchange rate was like 52 cents to the dollar. So, 10,000 New Zealand dollars became 5,200 US. So basically lost everything. But I got to Las Vegas, and see you guys. I couldn't get a job, and I had to finally take a job selling aloe vera cream from those carts that you see in the mall. That's how where I had gone. And I could remember just being so embarrassed from doing that. And there was this cart next to Yankee Candle, which was a retail store. And when people would walk in, especially Polynesians, for some reason, it would bother us. Like, oh my gosh, look, they're coming in. I would jump into the Yankee Candle store and make pretend I wasn't working. So it was one of those things. It was all about ego when I look back on it. But I would work those selling aloe vera cream. People would come around. I'd put aloe vera cream on their hands. I'm like, oh, this is so gross. I have to touch everybody. And then I was paid commission only. So some days I'd go home with some money in my pocket. Other days I'd be like broke because I didn't make a sale. But while I was there, I used to see people coming in off the strip with plastic leis on, you know, and because we're the wedding capital of the world here in Las Vegas. And they would come in with leis, and I thought, oh, how tacky to wear that on your wedding day. And so I had an idea. I went up to what was then called the Aladdin Hotel. It's now Planet Hollywood. I went upstairs and I said to the wedding planner up there that had the chapel, and I said, "Hi, my name's Willie, and I import leis from Hawaii. I import fresh flower leis, and if you need anything, call me." So I wrote my name on a piece of paper. I gave it to them, and I knew nothing about leis, but I just thought, let me try something. Anyway, the next day I get a call from her and saying they want to order leis for a wedding that was coming up. What can I recommend? And I was like, oh crap. What do I do now? And I remember, I've been to Hawaii several times, and I didn't know what I had no idea what retail and wholesale was, right? And so, but I knew there were leis stands in Hawaii, and I did the 411 thing, and I said, can I have Auntie Moana's leis stand, because I thought that was such a common name. At the Honolulu airport, I called them, and they were able to help me out with the ordering of the leis. So I borrowed the money to bring the leis to Vegas. I got them here, picked them up. I took them up to the wedding chapel, and I just doubled the price. And so I was able to start selling leis. I became the lei guy in Las Vegas, in the desert.
Where do you get the, I'll call it hustle, right?
Yeah.
So you get the hustle to just go out on a limb, and there's a lot of confidence involved with that, right?
Oh, big time.
Just say, hey, I import leis, and if you need any, give me a call. And then in your mind, I'll just figure that out later. Have you always had that kind of, I can jump off and figure it out on my feet? Or like, did you know you were kind of jumping over a cliff at that point?
Well, you know what? I've always been a hard worker, but it was more out of desperation. I had rent to pay. I had no money. There was times when I didn't even have bus fare because I didn't have a car. I could remember asking the bus driver to please let me get on. I don't have $1.20 to go from my house up on Flamingo and I think it was Decatur down to the strip. That's how bad it was. So out of desperation, I did things like that, and that turned into a business for me, the lei business, because people started calling. So I was able to quit my aloe vera job, right? And then what happened, I don't know if anybody was here during the time when they had pedicabs on the strip.
Mm-hmm.
And people would sit in the back and you were able to be driven around by pedicab. That was my job too. I took that job after I sold aloe vera cream, and I would only get tips. And I'd be out there in August at 110-degree weather, peddling people around. I think it was good for my health, but I took the job, I took the lei business, and I started importing more leis because I was able to get some great wholesale prices. I remember back then the leis, the single orchid leis, I was importing, paying $1.90 for those and retailing at $20 out here. Okay.
There's a big, I think a lot of people don't know, there's a big Pacific Islander population in Las Vegas. I remember when I lived on Oahu, that at the time, this is mid 90s, that was the #1 destination to move. When you moved out of Hawaii, Las Vegas at the time, that was the #1 city to move to. There's a big PI population there.
There sure is. And that's why they nickname it the 9th island out here, And there was a lot that I learned during that time. So I would import leis. And you mentioned the Pacific Island community. you know, when I retail Lay's at $20, they were the ones that always said to me, "Oh my gosh, where do you think we are, Hawaii?" They would always like, nobody bought Lay's from me, especially from the Pacific Island community, because they would always have family or friends bringing over. So that wasn't my clientele. My clientele was the people that never seen Lay's or saw those flowers. They just thought, wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, they don't have any family bringing them over.
Right, that's right.
Quick, on Facebook, Pauline White says she loves Willie. She loves you. And
Thanks, Pauline.
shout you out on Facebook.
Thanks. Yeah. So I would, I started importing Lay's, and then I would order extras, and I would have the guys on the pedicab sell Lay's from the back of to people on their bikes. So I told them, for every Lay you sold, I would give you $2.
You got a sales force.
And I got a sales force out there, and I started selling Lay's. And then when I had extra Lay's, I'd get my hustle on again. I'd go in front of the Bellagio Hotel at 1 o'clock in the morning after I was done peddling everybody around. And I would start hawking Lay's out in front of the Bellagio. I'm like, "Hey, you guys want to buy some Lay's?" You know, and they'd be like, security would come out and they'd kick me off, and I'd go across the street to oh gosh, I can't even think of the hotel. Anyway, the Paris. I go across the street to the Paris, and I start selling Lay's there, and they kick me off, and I go back in front of the Bellagio. And what happened, the one evening I was selling Lay's in front of the Bellagio, this guy taps me on the shoulder and says to me, "Are these your Lay's?" And I'm like, "Why do you want to know?" They could be my Lay's. And I said, why do you want to know? And he said, he was a director of entertainment for MGM. And would I be interested in doing these in the back lot of their hotel for a concert that was coming to town? And I'm like, sure, you know, who is it? And he's like, Jimmy Buffett. And I'm like, who's Jimmy Buffett? I had no idea who Jimmy Buffett is. And for your listeners, if you don't know who Jimmy Buffett is, these guys have a following. They're like the deadheads, right?
Parrot head.
They're parrot heads, right? So what they do is they wear coconut bras, anything that has to do with the South Pacific or the island culture, they wear it. And so he says, yeah, come to the back. And I thought, okay. And he says, bring your Lay's with you and you could come sell them back there. And I asked him, I said, so how many Lay's do you think I need? And he said, oh, maybe about 5,000. I was like, 5,000? How am I going to get the money to get 5,000 Lay's from Hawaii here and over there? So I asked all my pedicab drivers, the guys who were selling, and they all chipped in and helped me buy these Lay's. And I told them I'd pay them back with 10% interest. Well, 10% on the money, so it was more than 10% interest because I only borrowed it for 2 weeks, right? So all these Lay's came in. We set up at the back of MGM Hotel and Casino. And Orchid Lay's, if you know Orchid Lay's, they don't have any scent to them, right? They're the purple Lay's. Mm-hmm. And so I invited my mom. I said, Mom, call the aunties and you guys wear your muumuus and your pulutasis and your big hats and come help me sell these in the back of the MGM. And so what we did is they brought all the sprays, like the ginger sprays and the plumeria spray. They sprayed all the flowers, right? So they had a scent. And then we laid out the falas, like the mats on the ground. And we cut the Lay's, right? And the aunties, my mom and all the aunties were sitting on the ground, making pretend they were making the Lay's, and we were just pulling them out of the box in the back. So
impression is everything.
Hey, yeah, it was great. And so the Lay's were starting to die because we had sprayed them all with the perfume that had all the alcohol in it. And we were selling them like, we sold 5,000 in an hour and a half, fresh flower Lay's.
Wow.
So I was like, I've got something here. Well, that very day, the general manager of Margaritaville was opening up the following week here in Vegas. And he said, why don't you bring the Lay's and bring that to my restaurant and we'll set up a Lay stand for you. And I said, I could do better. Why don't I bring Polynesian Entertainment with me and the Lay's, and you let us walk around and sell the Lay's to all your customers. And he said, great idea. And that was, we did that for 4 years and we made a killing. Yeah, so.
You got the right place. Real quick, people shouting you out saying we love Style Pasifika. Eddie Unatoa says aloha.
Hey. Hi, Eddie.
Tomasa, Pearly Shells, and Helen Verma.
Oh, thanks. Hi, Helen. We took care of your order today.
Happy customers.
Happy customers. Right?
Got a lot of those. So, I mean, it sounds like you've got that entrepreneurial mind. Every piece of the day and every conversation is an opportunity. Like, do you want to do this? Well, no, actually, I want to do that and more. Or I love the story of just saying I import lays, and if you want better lays than what I'm seeing, let me know. And then a business flourishes out of that with you having confidence that you're going to be able to use your work ethic to work through that. So going back a little bit further, was there somebody that you saw when you were growing up that had that work ethic? Like, because you're talking about working 18, 20-hour days. You're
Right.
working all day and then you're out at the Bellagio at 1 a.m. Was there anybody that you saw growing up that you modeled that after, or is that just something you learned yourself?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I grew up in Redondo Beach, California. I born and raised in that town. And Andre Harris, who's on here too, we all went to Maricosta High School in Manhattan Beach. And growing up there, we still didn't have a lot of money. People thought we had money living in that city, but we were poor. I grew up poor. And I could remember all my Palangi friends that lived at the beach, right? I used to go there and I just go, oh my gosh, look at their houses. And I would want that. It was something that I really wanted growing up. I wanted to live like that. And so I think a lot of that was my drive. Seeing that drove me to want a better life, And I think I owe it, a lot of it to my friends growing up, in high school and stuff. And I got to see that other part of the world. And that still today, there's days, I have a lot of this stuff and I get into this fear that I'm going to lose it. Right? I get scared that, so I work harder, harder, harder. And sometimes I got to stop myself and just check myself and go, look, that's not reality. Reality is you're comfortable, you're good, you're fine. And you don't have to live in this fear that you're going to lose it, And there are days where, it's tough, It's getting rid of those old ideas and old ideals.
Right. I remember reading an interview, I think it was with Jerry Rice, where he talked about that. Like, it wasn't necessarily, it was more the fear of losing that drove him than it was like, it was great winning Super Bowls and being MVP and those kind of things. But it was like, he didn't want to, he was afraid of getting beat. He was afraid of losing. He was afraid of a lot of things. And he talked about how that drove him to work out when other people were working out, to work hard when other people weren't working out. And I think his off-season work ethic is legendary. So I think, you think that that's a piece of what drove you?
For sure. And when I went into, I had the opportunity of taking my business plan to the NFL. And I could remember when I was in New York, just being so scared and consumed with fear that I wasn't good enough, that I was going to go in there and I didn't have the vocabulary words to use in front of a panel of NFL people. And I almost backed out. I almost like, I can't do this, I'm not going to get it anyway. My old ideas about failure, all this. Let me back up. There was a mentor of mine that always used to say to me, Willie, put away your crystal ball. Because for me, I would always forecast my future, and it was never how wonderful I was going to do with the project. It was always the worst case scenario. I'm going to fail. This is what it's going to be like, And so I had to practice, and it takes even to today, even today, I still have to practice that. There's days where I get in my head, I'm going, oh, this isn't going to happen. I know it's not going to happen. And I have to stop myself and go, what do you think? What are you talking about? This hasn't even happened. And you're already setting yourself up for failure. So it just takes practice, and I understand that. I still have thoughts about pushing Preston down Eastern Avenue here in Las Vegas in a shopping cart. Like I've lost it. It gets that bad sometimes, and I'm thinking, why do I think like that when I still have a nice house there? You know? So it's just the old head games that I have to get rid of, and it just
Yeah, it's
takes
kind of
time.
interesting. Those are the things that that get us to where we're at, but then those are the things that cause you to worry maybe when there's not a reason to worry.
Right.
Like that's what motivated to get where they're at, and then it's like, when do you not turn it off, but like don't have I don't have to worry about bus fare at this point. There's
Right. Yeah.
somewhat comfortable. I gotta imagine that it was nerve wracking to go into an NFL boardroom and talk to them about merchandising and designing. Talk a little bit about that process of just getting into that first piece of the relationship with the NFL.
Well, I'll have to take the story back a little bit more, and then I could kind of fill you in on the NFL. So when we were at Margaritaville, we were doing well, and then Hawaii had sent these black and orange kukui nuts to us. And I don't know if you don't know what kukui nuts are, the black ones, everybody sees the black. Well, I was like, who the hell is going to buy these ugly things? Black and orange are Halloween colors. Well, we got them, I put them out, and a lady came up to me and she's like, I need to order 500 of those kukui nuts. I'm like, what for? And she said to me that she was the manager of the fan club for the San Francisco Giants. And she wanted to buy 500 of them. I'm like, oh, what a great idea. And that was when the idea was born that I could put logos on the kukui nuts. So if I wanted to, so then I had these kukui nuts made, and I had artists paint like the S and the F on there. And then it looked like a D and a Q. It's just so bad. The artwork was so bad on these kukui nuts. Well, anyway, I finally found a factory that could produce the kukui nuts for me. And I had to show them what PMS colors were, because we couldn't get a license unless we matched the PMS colors exact. So the first account I had was the NCAA, right? And I had I went to this show in Pittsburgh, and I remember showing it to all the colleges, and I had a standing ovation because it was something different and new. And then I went to the licensing company, which is the Collegiate Licensing Company, and I'm sorry, back to that show. So I'm at the show and people came up, we want to order these for our school. We want to order these for our bookstore. I'm like, great, great, great. And then they would ask the question, who are you licensed by? And I'm like, license? What do you mean license? And then they explained to me that I had to be licensed with the colleges in order to get them into the stores or to sell them. And I'm like, well, I'm not licensed. So they said, well, you have to have some history with CLC in order to get the license. Well, if you don't give me the license, how am I going to have any history with you? It was a catch-22. So I then had to team up with another company on the East Coast. And I remember the company, I flew out to Washington, D.C., met with her, and then we flew her out. And we thought it was going to be a great partnership. She came out, she licensed the product. We made the product, she licensed it, we sold it to her, she sold it back to us, we sold it to the school. That's how the routine worked.
That's a hustle again. You're not a bad hustle in a bad way, but that is again. It's this is not gonna be a wall in my way. I'm gonna figure how I can do this. Again, not everybody has that. Not everybody has that mentality of I'm not going to take no. I'll take no for now, and then I'll go figure out how to make it a yes. So I hope that you appreciate that. That's
I do now. I definitely do, and it's something a value that I teach my son and my kids and every relative I come in contact with is we have to be in the solution. You have to stay in the solution. Problems are going to come up all the time in our life. We could sit there and go, woe is me, feel sorry for ourselves, we're never going to get out of this. Or you could kick yourself in the ass and say, what is the solution here? Let's get into it, and then start the action. And it's always worked for me. And I guess that's one of those values that's been instilled in me, and it works to this day. And so I've been very blessed to have that.
I think that, and we say this a lot on the show, learning how to deal with disappointment is more important than learning how to deal with like winning. So figuring out how to deal with failure is more important than trying to not accept failure as a, you know, that I can, that failing is okay or whatever, but dealing with failure. I think that takes a lot of wind out of people's sails because they've got a dream. They don't know how to deal with failure. So they try once, they don't get it. And then, you know, it's like, you know, I don't know how to deal with that. And just in the brief time that we've spoken, you've run up against things where most people would see failure and maybe walk away from it. And you've said, I've got to figure out a way to make this work anyway.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I think kids, that's a great thing my daughter's a collegiate softball player. And I remember when she was young, I was saying, look, you're probably going to fail, you know, 5, 6, 7 times out of 10. Like you're going to, if you succeed 33% of the time, you're a really good hitter. But you got to deal with those 2/3 of the time that you're going to quote fail. You got to learn.
Yeah, I know. And you know, I've got a good story, but I also have stories that failure, you know, like I've overspent. I didn't do things right. I didn't make the right decisions. And I could have just laid down and said, I quit. You know, I'm not going to do this. But I think I have that entrepreneur spirit too, where I want to keep going. And I think it's more my ego where I don't want to be seen as a failure, you know? And so I'm pushed to the limits to keep on improving or, you know, finding a solution. Because I've been rich, I've been poor, I've been rich, I've been poor, you know, and I've had my ups and downs, and you know, I'm still here. So
I think there's a saying that good is the enemy of great, because when we achieve good, then maybe I don't want to, you know, I'm too afraid to let go of good to reach for great.
yeah.
It doesn't seem like that's an issue for you. Like there's something in you innate that says I can get great. Like I don't have to settle for good. And I think it's so important. And that's kind of like that's the whole basis of the FICA broadcast, is to show. Naki is the other host. She's driving back from Vegas. Her husband, they celebrated his birthday in Las Vegas, and they're on the way back now. She said, you know, we want the Pacific Islander youth to see the role models coming brown, and you know,
Great.
to be in
Yeah.
and to be Roman Reigns, or to be an actor, and that's great. But there's brown people, role models winning in life that you don't see. And so to have the youth see and hear you talk about the entrepreneurial spirit and not taking and dealing with failure and sharing that, like you just said, like there were times where, you know, I've been poor, I've been rich, I've been poor, but you've dealt with those kind of things and you've overcome that. It's so important for our younger generation. And what a great role model that Preston has, that he sees this living. He sees that, you know, day in and day out. What's been the most satisfying part professionally? I mean, you've worked with, everybody's seen a sport. I think I've got Steelers Kukui nut. I think that's Steelers Ulas. But what's been the most satisfying part for you out of your entrepreneurial career?
I think being able to give my family what I didn't have, my kids, you know. I get to go on those family trips now that I remember all those Palangi kids going on. And that is something that I take pride in. You know, I want my family to go skiing. I want my kids to enjoy that experience, to go fishing, to, you know, go on a cruise, you know. And that's been the most satisfying part for me. And I talk to my cousins a lot, you know, and we're always saying that we have to make the next generation better than ours. We have to, you know. And we don't have a lot of that wealth that's handed down from us, from our parents, I'm a first generation American. My parents came from Samoa. They didn't know about all that. So it's up to me to leave my children, my son, something. And hopefully his children will get better. And, I see that a lot in my immediate family. I got family that go off to the Air Force or into the military, I shouldn't say Air Force, military. They're getting their degrees. In just my immediate family, there's 20 of us. And out of that 20, I think 7 of us, I don't have a degree yet, but 7 of us have gone on to get their master's degree. That's pretty impressive.
That's
And
very,
I want that. I want to be the example for my son, Preston. I can't give away something I haven't got. And that's
yeah.
a big deal for me. So
The people of color hasn't had the same opportunity to create generational wealth.
there you go. Yeah.
And it's kind of the segue into what we met and what we talked about. The opportunity to create generational wealth hasn't been the same for people of color. But knowledge, work ethic, those kind of things, love, tradition, family, those are the generational wealth that we'll always have.
Right.
And then we can create, wealth, the common definition of wealth to pass on generationally. But it is harder, and it's harder for you to get there, because college isn't for everybody. Not everybody, and has to go to college or needs to go to college, but we need the same opportunities. We're in every election seems to be the most important election.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that the first time I ever really paid attention to politics was probably Bush after Reagan. So 41, I think, was running for president. And I remember hearing this is the most important election that our country has faced. And then ever since then, I've heard the same thing. But this time it does, it does seem like it's so polarizing. Our country is so split that this does seem to be one of the most important election that we've seen come through. You've gotten involved in it to make a difference in the election. Talk a little bit about that. How do you and I end up talking politics? Because it's a big topic.
I don't know if you want to get me started. Actually, it was a fluke. I saw a lot of the people talking, online, and you had supporters for Polynesians for Trump. When I saw that, I was just like, whoa, where is our platform? Where is our forum for Polynesians for Biden-Harris? And Robin Nomaya and I were talking one night, just texting each other, and we just said, why don't we start a Facebook page with Pacific Islanders for Biden-Harris? And so I put it up. This is a month ago. It's only been a month. And the amount of people that came on that shared our same values and our same ideals just flooded the Facebook. I mean, we're almost up to 4,000 members already and growing.
Wow.
So, and it's been a great platform because people feel safe to post, what we want to post about our candidates. And then, of course, there's some memes about the other guy. But it's just a safe place to go. And because of that, I think it's just grown, and the word is spread. And we've just been doing our best just to spread the word, to get people out to vote, make sure they are prepared and plan, know they have a plan in place to vote, and just doing our part, all we can to get the millennials out to vote, to register. And there's just so much that affects our Pacific Island community in this election. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, And I guess that's, so I told you before we came on, the last 3 days has been just so hard for me. And that's because I like to control things, right? And now that I have no control over the way people talk, the way people follow through, I have no control over these elections. I was just in that depressed mode, like, what am I going to do? Don't you know? And that you've got to vote this way. And I realized that I got to stop. I can't change anybody's opinion but myself, right? And I think a lot of us need to realize that the only people we could change is this person right here, you know? And so for my group and for my supporters, we need to do our work to get flip that Senate seat, you know, from
Yeah,
me, and that's important.
you bring up a really important point, and we've been talking about this on our Sunday show week to week. We got to get in the game. Like we can't not be in the census. We can't
Right? Yeah.
vote. We can't not, like, that's all. We're on the sidelines, and there's decisions being made that affect our people. There's decisions being made by people that don't look like us. There's decisions being made that affect our kids and our future, that they're in the game, they're on the field. If we're not voting and we're not part of the census, we're on the sidelines.
Counted, right.
They're running
so true.
affect us. And I don't know, how to get that across to people, that if you haven't registered if you haven't done the census, like, it's 8 days away.
Yeah.
The is 8 days away. It's 9 questions. That's all it is. 9 questions. It takes like 5 minutes to get done. It is not a difficult process. You get counted in the census in California, it's $4,300. That's the funding that a count is worth. So there's $1.5 trillion the federal government's going to apportion to about 320 programs. $1.5 trillion a year. If we're not counted, then, like, Poly by Design is a 501c3. If I'm going to go and say I want to help X amount of people in the city of San Francisco, or the city of or the county of Santa Clara, and the numbers come back and they go, well, there's only 800 Pacific Islanders in San Francisco, or whatever the number is, then I'm trying to get support and services and programming for a number that's like, a tenth of what it is. So to get involved, and like you said, vote. We have to vote, and start early. Like, voting, I wasn't a big political, I didn't look into politics. Wasn't really interested in it until, maybe 10 years ago. Then it really started, like, these decisions.
Likewise, yeah.
Right, that these decisions affect us. So that actually was my next question was, did you see somebody that was involved in politics, or how did you become interested?
Well, to be honest, I was a bad government student. I was bad in government. I didn't listen. I only started getting interested in politics, I think, when Obama was running, and it was just little bits here. I didn't know what an electoral vote was. I had no idea. I didn't know what a Senate was. I didn't know what a House was. I didn't know Congress. I didn't know any of that stuff. And I've just learned over the years. And now I understand it more. And I think I've only gotten into politics for selfish reasons, because there's things that I want for my son. I really want him. I sit here at night sometimes and I just get that anxiety thinking about the climate and about the planet. What do I want to leave for this kid? Do I want him to be concerned about all these things? Preston's pretty smart for an 11-year-old. He knows his politics. It's crazy how he watches things, And he said to me the other day, he's like, Dad, I'm really scared about climate change. Is it going to, affect me? And I'm like, yeah, it is. So you've got to go to school, study, and make the changes you want to make made in this world. And so that was big. And then healthcare, I'm a diabetic, and I've got to protect, pre-existing conditions. My mother's has problems. She's 76. I want to make sure she's taken care of, and her Social Security is there for her. There's a lot of things that affect me and my family personally. I'm gay, so of course I want my gay rights. I want the same rights as everybody else. And So that's kind of where I stand on the political stance.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't always like that. Let me tell you something about being gay. I didn't come out until I was 28 years old, and I could remember my first gay pride parade. They were like, "Come on, walk with us down the street, down the middle of the street." I'm like, "Oh hell no, I'm not doing that." I would walk on the side of the sidewalks because I didn't want people to see me, you know. And it wasn't until I've got to start living my life for who I am, what my authentic self. I remember Andre Harris told me that. Live your authentic self, Willie. It's true.
Fall into place when you're aligned with, you know, your work is your passion, right?
Yeah.
I hear about people that they hate to go to work every day, and I'm like, man, how do you do that? That's a tough life to wake up every day and hate to go to work. But you made a really good point about, you know, it's for the next generation. You know, Preston is 9, did you say?
He's 11. Sorry, he's 11.
So he's going to, if we don't get things right this time, the next time he's going to be count and correct the count, he's going to be 21.
Yeah.
Like college, mostly done, high school, done. Yeah. All those, you know, and if we missed out on programming and we missed out on, you know, funding and those kind of things, we got another 10 years before we get to try to get it right all over again. Right. You bring up a really good point, and we've done a lot of work with Neo Vea, the founder of Utopia San Francisco, and he talks about his coming out, and sometimes he talked about a double jeopardy kind of thing, like going to bars that were gay bars, but then being there, but they weren't for gay brown people. Like you're getting discriminated in other places because you're gay, and then you're being discriminated against there because you're brown and gay. Was the coming out process, was that extremely difficult for you at 28? Do you think that would have been different early?
Oh yeah, man. It was harder because I am not, you know, in Samoa, I think you're accepted gay if you're more feminine, fafafinge. You know, if you act fafafinge, your movement, you dress it, it's okay. You know, everybody, that's fine. But if you're not that fafafinge, you're not acting it, I even still get that, you know, how's your wife doing? And I'm like, oh, he's fine, kind of thing. So this thing, because people they don't think I'm gay, right? Mm-hmm. And when I came out, it was difficult because I didn't want to embarrass my family. That's how I thought it would embarrass them. And that I would lose them. I would lose all my family, that they would disown me. You know, again, that head, my crystal ball was out, worst case scenario.
Right.
And I could remember I just had it, and I told my mom, and she looked at me, and the first thing she said, whatever you do, don't tell your dad. I was like, what? That doesn't help me. Wow. And I just said, forget it. I'm telling my dad. I told my dad, and my dad says, son, I still love you. And as soon as I got that okay from him, I didn't care what the rest of the world thought.
Right.
I was just like, forget you, you know. I know my immediate family loves me. And then my friends were saying, you're still Willie. We still love you. My cousins were like, they would say when I told them, their heart dropped into their stomach, but then they gave me a big hug and said, we still love you. And then they would go, now I know why you took us to those bars.
Now it all makes sense.
Now, yeah, and that's what they say. Oh, now it all comes together. I'm like, yeah, duh. So
you ever have people tell you, you don't act gay?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I get that all the time. You don't act gay. You're not gay. So
one way that all people, you know, all X people, all gay people, all brown people, like you're all supposed to act a certain way. It just, sometimes I think people say ignorant things without even realizing what they're saying is offensive or ignorant.
Yeah. And a lot of it was a lot of shame. I grew up, you know, how many churches did I grow up in? I grew up in the local Kaiki, local Pope, local this, local that, all different kinds of churches. So I always had that in the back of my mind. I was a bad person. I was evil, you know, being gay, I'm going to go to hell. So why would I want to come out?
Right.
You know?
So
but it was, I remember this again. I had a great mentor that said to me, Willie, if you have a punishing God, you better find a new God. And that has stuck with me ever since that day. And I just said, you're right. And so the God of my understanding today is somebody, a God that's loving, cares about me, and accepts anything I am, who I am, and all my flaws that go along with it.
That's great advice. Find a new God.
Find a new God.
So Naki's apparently not driving because she's texting. She said, we build this big old thing in our head. Live your truth is the happiest or best way to live.
True.
And
That is so true.
if you align
Yeah.
actions with your beliefs, the world gets better. But I mean, and you said that earlier. If I fear doing something, I'm going to make it in my head the absolute worst. Like, you leave it to me and I'm going to make it like the sky is going to fall. There's going to be like an earthquake's going to open up, swallow me up. Like, I'll make it way worse than when I actually go through whatever it is. I'm like, wow, this was either not bad at all, or it was bad, but it wasn't nearly what I made it out to be.
Right. 99.9% of what I think in my head doesn't even happen, you know? And again, that mentor is so awesome. He says, Willie, you got to get out of that bad neighborhood. I'm like, what are you talking about? Your head. It's a bad neighborhood. And man, I'm so grateful for that man and everything he's taught me, man. He's just been one of the biggest influences in my life. And it's small things like those. And, you know, another acronym he would always tell me is fear. What does fear? What is fear? False evidence appearing real. That's how he would break it down. You know, it's great man, right? And I remember those things. So when I'm in fear, I'm like, this isn't real. You know, what's in your head isn't really happening. It's your horror film. It's your film that you're playing, you know, that you're trying to make it the worst case scenario, and it never is, you know. Once I get into the action and do it and get through it, I'm like, oh, it wasn't that bad.
I think that's the difficult piece, is taking that leap, though. I mean, it's like, if we make that in our heads, then it's just difficult to say, to do that. It's difficult to do what you did and say, hey, I am Port Lays. You know what I mean? It's difficult because if you think about that too much, most people are going to say, wow, if I say that, what's going to happen? Well, they're going to tell me that I need 5,000 lays, and where the heck am I going to get you know what I mean? Like, we make that into our own thing. It's a gift to be able to act, even though that you've got these demons in your head, and still go forward, because everybody's got the demons in their heads. It's just difference whether you're able to say that's fear and work it out and still go forward. Your business. So talk a little bit about your business. So that's
okay.
Talk about.
So, I think I left off when I was in Washington, D.C. We met with this company. She licensed our product. And then the relationship was great. So we used her license with the NCAA. And then after a year, I got a text message from her at an event I was doing saying that we want out. And I'm like, what do you mean you want out? And she said that she was going to do the kukui nut business, and she wanted us out of the business, that she was taking her license back. So what she did is she learned who all our suppliers were, how we ran the business, who our accounts were, because she was involved in everything. And she basically took everything, and we were stuck. We couldn't license, we couldn't sell anything. So we almost went bankrupt at that time. Scott and I had put all our money into the company, and I was like, oh, and I almost gave up. I just almost gave up. I said, this is too hard. And so I remember with, you know, so many Samoans that played at USC, right? And so I went directly to USC, and I went with the licensing director there. And I said, look, I'm Samoan. This is a Polynesian product that this lady's trying to sell you. I don't think that's right. Why don't you give me a license for 1 year and let me prove to you what I could do? And so he says, okay, you have 1 year to prove yourself. And he gave me the license for USC. So I only had one license. And I asked him, I said, okay, can I also have permission to roam the tailgates with these kukui nuts.
Be thinking.
And the guy said, and he said, yeah, you could do that. And the first game we got to Rome was USC versus Oregon. And so I called all my cousins, relatives. They came out. I had a team of 20, and they put kukui nuts on their arms. And a lot of people know they walked around the USC, the stadium there in LA, and we did $25,000 in 3 hours in sales. We did the most sales. We broke record. USC saw how much they were getting in royalties. They gave us a license. And USC was our #1 customer. I mean, if you go to a USC game, you will see kukui necklaces everywhere. And then we became a company that was able to license apparel. So Nike was the only company to license apparel, and then they allowed me to do it because we had something different. We had like before Maui even came out, we had the Maui cartoon character with the USC Trojan. And we just did things that were different with the Pacific Island feel. And the people bought it up. They bought it, they loved it. And we were there for 5 years, did really well. Long story short, I got all my license back for the NCAA. So I licensed the Pac-12, SEC, Big Ten, all the big colleges. We sell to their bookstores. We sell at their football games. And then from there, I had that to go then and get the NFL license, right? And so I went to New York. We flew into New York, Scott and I. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So on Facebook, Susie Al sends her love.
Thank you, Susie.
And then Helen has a question, which I think I know the answer to. How is your solution as an entrepreneur different from your competitors?
Different from my competitors. I don't know how different it would be, because our competitors probably still have, if they're in business and they started a business, they have that same drive as I do, that entrepreneurship. They want to keep going. And I've seen a lot of that in the industry, because I've seen companies come and go, and those companies that are still around, they have managed to find ways to get through difficulties. Even now with COVID, we had Target. Target's one of our largest accounts, because we put kukui nuts in all their stores, okay, which is a $1.2 million account just for one shipper that goes in all over it. We lost it last year due to COVID, and that's a big kick in the gut. And then we got an email last week saying that they're not going to do a 2021 program with us. So now I could get into that, oh crap, woe is me, how are we going to do this? But instead, I switched gears and I'm like, okay, we have these other stores. We still have Safeway, we have Kroger, we have Ralph's. Let's focus on those companies that continue to buy from us and buying from us for years. And so now we're introducing a new program to them, not only the kukui nut. We've been doing the kukui nuts, let's say class of 2020 or 2019 for years. They've been in the grocery stores. I know they're in the Bay Area because we're in all the Safeways up there. But now we're introducing a new product, which is it's really tacky. I think it's tacky, but it's a big foam piece that says class of 2021, and it's a big chain, but the seniors, I think, are going to like it. So we had to switch and find something that worked. And then we're going to, present that to the stores and see if they'll buy that and make up for some of the losses. But it's hard sometimes not wallowing in that, woe is me, we just lost these accounts. I could stay there, or I could get in the solution. And then Mr. Olympia, the largest bodybuilding competition in the world, is supposed to be coming here in December. We're hoping it does. But I got that contract last year, and I produce all their apparel worldwide. So now our focus is on online sales. And that's where our focus has been. So it's just staying in the solution and doing what's in front of you, and not jumping ahead. I have to, and again, that takes practice, and it's doing what's the next thing that's in front of you, and not trying to do a million things all at once.
I know that the Weeders run the
Joe Weider,
yeah, they run the bodybuilding world. Was it hard to break into Mr. Olympia licensing? Because that seems like a really close-knit, tight-wound industry.
So there's no coincidences in life, man. I've been doing Mr. Olympia apparel for 10 years now. And what I mean by doing is they would send their apparel here to Las Vegas when they did the big show here. we would sell it for them because I have the big account at the Orleans Arena. We would sell it for them and we would only keep 15% of the sales and they would get the rest. So we count it, sell it, do all that stuff. Last year, Mr. Olympia was sold to Muscle Media, Muscle and Fitness, right? And it happened that I sent an email to the company saying, look, we've been telling, every year we tell you guys we sell out of everything, and you guys tell us that, that's okay, we want to sell out, and they never buy any more. They never supply us with any more apparel. So I said, just let us do it. We're here in Vegas. If we run out of t-shirts, we could go make some in our shop right across the street. And they would all say no. So I actually sent an email to that same woman. She said, they sold it, contact this person. So the president, Dan Solomon, the president of Olympia, emailed me and said, would you guys be interested in taking over all the apparel for Mr. Olympia? That's how simple it was, all of it. So last year was our first year. We took over all the Olympia apparel. We designed everything. We set up the booth and we killed it. We increased our sales by 200% last year. And this year we were looking to do another 200% because that's how, the new designs and stuff we come out with are amazing. And that's how I got the account. It was that simple. By asking. Sometimes it's just asking.
Hey, Naki and
It's
I,
that simple.
there's this thing that we say is you got to say it out loud.
Right. Yeah.
You got to tell somebody if you want something and then work your ass off for it and believe in it. And man, one of the things that I'll just example I'll give you is we always say, speak it out. First, we got to speak it out. And we said crazy things like, we don't have a studio. We need a studio. And
Yeah.
I kid you not, within 2 weeks, we're sitting down with an organization talking about something completely different. And how can we help you? Well, got to say it, right? Well, this sounds crazy, but we got to find a studio. Oh, next thing you know, we're working with them with a studio. But you got to be bold enough to say what you want and not
Right.
be shy to say, oh, well, I actually want 10, but let me ask for 2. And then you get 1 or none. You know what I mean? If you want 10, say you want 10. If you want, whatever you want, say it, speak it, and believe in it, and good things happen. Great things happen.
Oh, I agree 100. There was a time when we first got the NFL license. So just to give you an idea of what we had to pay $100,000 up front in royalty. Okay. And then we had to buy product. And then we had to report everything that was sold and pay on top of that. Right. And there was a point where I just like, how are we going to do this? How is this? How are we going to make this happen? And it got to the point where I didn't know. I would curl up in bed just thinking, I'm not going to be able to meet payroll. There's no way I'm going to get through this, right? What I realized is I was so focused, this tunnel, like, this is the way I want my life to be. It's got to be NFL or it's got to be nothing, right? I could remember getting up and crying one time and just praying to God because, my prayers to God was like, here's what you need to do for me. Now, can you get it done? And I realized that I had to change the way I did things. And my prayer was like, help me, And again, going back to my mentor saying, there's so much going on out here, Willie, but you're so focused here. Let go. And he would always say, let go and let God. Turn it over, but you got to do the footwork. I said, I don't know what the footwork is. I'm trying to do the footwork. And he goes, just do what's in front of you. Bro, that day that I did that, the next day I get a call from all the grocery stores saying, we'd love to have your product in our stores, in Shippers, in Safeway, in Kroger. And we went national within 2 days of that. And we were able to, make the money that we needed to pay for all these royalties. And sometimes it's just letting go, and sometimes I think what's good for me really isn't. If I just open up and see what else is around me, great things happen. Like you said, miracles,
Yeah,
tiny miracles, like there's some days I think, how did I get here? why am I doing kukui of all things in my life? Kukui, it's the weirdest thing.
I think the being careful what you ask for. We've, I've had to correct myself because there's times where I still have a 9 to 5. My passion is Poly by Design, the FICA broadcast, talking to role models like yourself. This is my passion. There's going to be a time where I go full time and I'm not at my 9 to 5. There's reasons that I'm still there and working through. But I was, maybe 6 months ago, I was thinking as we're growing, I was thinking, man, I got to get out of my 9 to 5. I don't want my 9 to 5. I want to just do, Poly by Design full time. And I started thinking, you better be careful what you're asking for, because if you were to get fired today, the universe just gave you what you wanted. So be careful of what you ask and how you,
right?
Because, the law of attraction, if you say, I don't want something over and over and over and over again, universe might just hear you saying what you don't want, and just what you don't want, not that you don't want it. And you might get that. So manifesting things in the right manner and making sure you're asking the universe and God for exactly what you want, and being sure that is what you want. Because
right,
if you would have just got the NFL, if that's all that you wanted, you didn't get all the other stuff, then how much did you miss out on?
right.
Previous guest Trevor Husseini said, manifest destiny. So it's like,
True.
this is what is supposed to happen.
Right.
Again, it's a gift. Not everybody has that. So for you to be able to share that with your family, your loved ones, your son, and to have them see that in living color is huge. That is
Thank you.
huge.
Thank you, Carl.
Wow. I mean, I could just nerd out on the details of scaling up, putting product on, like putting product on a company shelf like Target or Walmart or something. People, they think Shark Tank, and and then I get the contract. And then they say they want 2 million pieces of product like next month. How do you scale? I think those are things that not everybody thinks about. Of what does yes mean? Well, yes means like hundreds of thousands of dollars in production and all those kind of things. The way you scaled, your dream and your entrepreneurship. This is you are the perfect person for us to interview. I mean, everybody we use is the perfect person, but the way you're speaking, there's somebody, and you may never hear this. You may never, the kid or the person may never come to you someday and go, Willie, I heard what you said, or I heard you say what your mentor said. And, it changed me from that day. I can think of teachers that said things where I took those and it affected my life. I never got a chance to go back and tell my first grade teacher, wow, you actually taught me how to read and read well. And I read better than, a lot of kids in my class, but it opened up my world, because I could just pick up a book and read it. I never got a chance to tell her that. There's going to be people that never get a chance to shake your hand and say, Willie, things that you said, things that I've heard, not just on our show, whoever you interact with, that, the shadow you cast is big. And the words you say, people are going to take to heart. And, it sounds cliche, but you'll change lives by the way you're living yours. And
That's it.
I'm glad that you shared the time to come on today.
Well, thank you, Carl, for having me, your team. You guys are doing amazing work for the Pacific Island community. Thank you.
Well, having people like you out there is what makes our job easy. We just got to get you on here and let you tell your journey. Any shout outs or anything that you want to get out before we go? I'm going to wrap up a little bit with what the project that you and I are working on and go, but I want to make sure that if there's any other things that you wanted to get out when you came on, or shout outs, how do people find you? Because right now I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people that are thinking, I want to find out what this guy's making and what his product is. So shout out, social media, how do people get a hold of you and see your stuff?
Well, you could go on to gonuts1.com. That's GONUTS one.com. That's one of the websites for kukui, and we do custom kukui. That's been a big deal now for a lot of the families, and we're doing a lot of Army kukui nuts for the people in Hawaii right now. We also, if you're a bodybuilder or getting into shape, olympiamerchandise.com. We'll be putting out a fashion show in October, so I'll hope to reach out to you, Carl. Maybe you could get some of that out. We'll be doing a live fashion show from the Strip.
Absolutely.
With our fall and winter release. And so looking forward to that. But other than that, to all the people out there, I was really glad when you asked me to come on, because it's a story. I mean, I didn't even get to share a lot of what my background was. On September 25th, 2003, I got sober then. So that's almost 17 years that I'll be celebrating in a couple of days, God willing. So, I mean, I was one of those guys that used to stand on the corner at the gas station or at a 7-Eleven and beg you for money so I could get my next fix or my next drink. And if I could do it, you could do it. If you're out there listening, if anybody out there, find the people, open up, be honest. And it's funny because you always want to hide. Well, I know. Let me talk. I always wanted to hide a part of me. I don't want you to know who the real Willie is, because I wasn't happy with the things I did in life. But when I started opening up and asking for help, that's when my life started to change. So if you're out there, you need some help, you're starting a business, feel free to reach out. I'll be happy to share all my ups and downs. And it's the downs that I love to share, because that's where the growth took place. When everything is working out and fine and dandy, you're making a lot of money, you don't care. It's when the crap hits the fan is when things change and you start to go, how did you get out of that? So I'll be happy to share that solution with anybody. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think we'll probably have you back on to talk about that as a topic. That's a whole nother journey, and that's probably a show in itself to give that credit, because that's life changing, and it plays into who you are today. So the project that Willie and I are working on together is a Trump-Biden debate. Poly by Design and the Faika broadcast are going to be, when we find the right participants, we're going to be hosting that. And Willie and I and Vo and the PIs for Biden and Harris are trying to put that together. So we need to finish our panelists, and then you'll hear about it. We'll put it out on all of our social media. And I'll say this, the important thing is that we have a platform for Pacific Islanders, and it will be seen by lots of people. So we want the debate to be a debate. We don't want it to reflect poorly on us. So I'll just say that. I just want to make sure that I don't want to put something out there that makes us look bad. I want it to reflect well on our community. So if you want to participate in that, I think it's your Facebook group, right? Is that the contact, or is it Vo?
It's Vo.
Okay.
Vo
Okay. So we'll put the contact information in on our social media, so you don't have to take notes. But Poly by Design, the Faika broadcast, it's PIs for Biden and Harris?
Pacific Islanders for Biden and Harris, yeah.
Pacific Islanders for Biden and Harris will be, we're going to be partnering together on that. So definitely I will see you and talk to you again. Thanks everybody for tuning in. And the Facebook questions we were flowing along. So we'll need to invite you back and have you talk again about being sober, and happy birthday.
Thank you. Thanks very much, guy. Thanks, Carl.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Take care, folks. Thank you.